Imagine the 17th century, an age when science and philosophy were tearing apart the ancient worldviews. Descartes had split the universe in two, mind and matter, thought and extension, forever divided. The human being became a kind of ghost in a machine, a thinking thing, trapped in physical substance. But then came Spinoza, a philosopher who refused to accept division. In his Ethics of 1677, he declared something radical. There is only one substance. God and nature are not two realities, but one and the same. Everything that exists, every thought, every motion, every particle is simply a mode of expression of this single infinite substance. Spinoza's universe was not built on cause and effect between separate things, but on expression, like different notes resonating within one great instrument. Mind and body, in his view, are not linked by mysterious interaction, but run in parallel as two expressions of the same reality. This is Spinoza's parallelism. The same event seen from two perspectives, one mental, one physical. Now, fast forward to today. The age of quantum fields, relativity, and system theory. The same question returns. How can consciousness, life, and matter all belong to one world? This is where IO in ontology enters. It extends Spinoza's monism beyond static substance into dynamic relation. Where Spinoza spoke of substance and modes, IO speaks of IOIs, inner indistinct, the primal generators from which all directionality, structure, and consciousness emerge. Instead of one infinite thing, I propose a field of generative entanglement, where in and out are not opposite, but contextual orientations, tendencies toward integration or differentiation, coherence or dispersion, whole being or part becoming. Through this range, what Spinoza called God or nature becomes a living relational field, continuously oscillating between inward unification and outward differentiation. A rhythm that gives rise to everything from the birth of galaxies to the pulse of thought itself. Take Spinoza's Conatus, his idea that every being strives to persist in its existence. I will reinterpret this not as a mechanical will to survive, but as an inward tendency toward coherence. An in-movement that sustains structure amid outward forces of dispersion. Even in biological systems, this balance is visible. Cells maintain their internal order while exchanging energy and information with the environment. In this way, IO provides what Spinoza's framework lacked, a mechanism of emergence. Where Spinoza described unity, IO explains how unity becomes multiplicity and returns again to unity, without leaving the ground of relational being. So, while Spinoza's world was one infinite substance, IO reveals that substance itself is relationally generated, not fixed, a dynamic equilibrium of in and out, coherence and expansion, the eternal rhythm of being becoming. In short, Spinoza freed philosophy from dualism. IO frees monism from stillness. Let's turn to the heart of Spinoza's metaphysics. His idea of substance, the ultimate something from which everything else flows. For Spinoza, substance is self-caused. It depends on nothing else for its existence or its concept. It simply is, eternal, infinite, complete. Every star, every thought, every emotion, every atom, all are just modes, expressions, or modifications of this one infinite substance. You could think of it like an ocean and its waves. The ocean doesn't need the waves to exist. It already is. but the waves cannot exist apart from it. The waves are the ocean in motion. Likewise, everything in the universe is substance, expressing itself in countless ways. This vision is deeply elegant. A universe without separation, without gaps. Everything is connected, not by external forces, but by belonging to the same ontological source. Yet, there is a hidden tension here. Spinoza's substance, though dynamic in expression, carries the weight of perfection, a being that already contains all possibilities in itself. Because it is eternal and self-complete, nothing truly new can emerge. Everything unfolds by logical necessity, not creative spontaneity. This means that change, freedom, and novelty become mere appearances, the refuge of an ocean whose depth never truly moves. Now, IO begins from a different primitive. Instead of one fixed substance, IO starts from indistinction, the state of being neither yet in nor out, the pre-differentiated field of IOIs. Where Spinoza's substance is self-caused completeness, IO's indistinction is self-generative openness, not a perfect fullness, but a fertile neutrality. It does not determine all that exists. It gives rise to existence by differentiation. Imagine the moment before heartbeat, a stillness pregnant with rhythm. That stillness is not static. It changes with the potential to pulse. IO treats that pulse, the transition from indistinction into in and out, as the true ontological genesis. In this way, IO preserves Spinoza's unity, but releases it from stillness. The universe is not longer a complete, motionless perfection, but a self-renewing field of relational emergence. Each in and out differentiation is a small action of creation, a step in the rhythmic self-expression of being. So, while Spinoza gave us a cosmos grounded in the eternal necessity of substance, IO reimagines the ground itself as a living indistinction, continuously generating the very directions, inward and outward, through which existence flows. Let's now move from Spinoza's timeless substance to the living pulse of inner ontology, where Spinoza imagined a single perfect substance, complete and eternal. IO begins with something more subtle and dynamic. Indistinction, the condition before anything becomes inward or outward, before matter and mind, before energy and space take form. The IOI is not a thing, not even a field in the physical sense. It is the ontological minimum, a state of pure relational potential. In this sense, there is no separation between inner and outer, self and world, substance and process, only a balanced superposition of both tendencies. We might call this equilibrium state omega, the zero point of existence, perfectly symmetric, holding within it two complementary directions. Inward, which tends toward coherence, unity, and inclusion. Outward, which tends toward differentiation, expansion, and expression. But this symmetry doesn't last. Just as the still surface of water begins to ripple when touched, the IOI's symmetry undergoes self-differentiation, a transition from indistinction into distinction. This is not caused by anything external. It is self-generative. In other words, existence begins not with a cause, but with a relation emerging within itself. Imagine a breath. Before inhaling or exhaling, there is a silent pause. That balanced moment is like omega. The instant you inhale or exhale, directionality appears, time begins, and the world unfolds. That shift from stillness to motion, from balance to rhythm, is what I call the transition from being to becoming. In Spinoza's vision, the universe is because substance is eternal and self-contained. But in IO's framework, the universe becomes because IO is continuously generated in our differentiation. Each event, each entity, a fresh expression of the same relational field. So rather than a fixed perfection, IO proposes a dynamic genesis. The IOI doesn't just exist, it oscillates, it doesn't define what is, it produces the possibility of being itself. And this is where IO depends Spinoza's legacy. It provides the missing mechanism of emergence, the ontogenic momentum that turns static unity into living becoming. In short, Spinoza's substance is the infinite that simply is. IO's IOI is the indistinction that endlessly becomes. Through this lens, existence is not a finished totality, but a continuous act of self-differentiation, a cosmic rhythm of inward coherence and outward creation, the pulse by which reality sustains itself. Let's step now into one of Spinoza's most fascinating and difficult ideas, his treatment of the relationship between mind and body, which he called parallelism. In the Ethics, Spinoza begins with the daring claim that everything that exists is a mode of a single infinite substance, which he identifies with God or nature. But this single substance, he tells us, can be understood through infinite attributes, infinite ways in which the one reality expresses itself. Out of these infinite attributes, human beings can grasp only two: thought, the realm of ideas, consciousness, and mental events; extension, the realm of physical things, bodies, and motion. Now, here's the key point. Spinoza insists that thought and extension do not interact causally. The mind doesn't push the body, and the body doesn't create thoughts. Instead, they unfold in perfect parallel, like two mirrors reflecting the same process from different angles. To visualize this, imagine two perfectly synchronized clocks. They tick at the same pace, but not because one drives the other. They are both set to the same cosmic rhythm. Likewise, every change in the body corresponds to a change in the mind, not through mechanical influence, but because they are two expressions of one underlying substance. This view, known as psychophysical parallelism, allows Spinoza to preserve both scientific determinism and mental coherence. Physics could proceed without interference from the soul. Consciousness could be explained without violating natural law. But it also raises a profound question. Why do the two realms stay in perfect harmony? If they never causally interact, what ensures their unity? Spinoza's answer remains implicit. The unity lies not in the attributes themselves, but in the substance they both express. The mind's order and the body's order are two sides of the same coin, different ways of perceiving the same single process. Think of it like a song being played and heard. The vibration of strings and the experience of melody are not two separate events. They are the same events seen from two perspectives, one physical, one experiential. In this way, Spinoza's philosophy dissolves Cartesian dualism without collapsing everything into pure materialism. The world, for Spinoza, is one vast self-expressing whole, appearing as thought from within and as extension from without. Still, one mysterious remains. What actually generates this parallelism? What connects these two synchronized flows? The decathlon will lead us directly to inner ontology, where this parallel structure is reinterpreted not as two independent realms, but as the directional flow of the same relational process, the inward and outward passage of being itself. Now let's move from Spinoza's parallel attributes to a deeper, more dynamic reinterpretation through inner ontology, where The relationship between mind and body, thought and extension, coherence and motion is not merely parallel, but co-generative. Spinoza described mind and body as two synchronized but non-interacting orders, like two clocks ticking in perfect unison. I.O. takes that symmetry and gives it life. It replaces static correspondence with directional flow, showing how the mental and the physical actually arise together as two pages of the same ontological rhythm. At the foundation of this rhythm are the two directional tendencies that structure all reality, inwardness and outwardness. Inwardness corresponds to coherence, reflection, and integration, the tendency of being together, center, and hold itself together. In Spinoza's terms, it mirrors the attribute of thought, the inner logic of the universe, its capacity for order and meaning. Outwardness, on the other hand, corresponds to differentiation, motion, and expansion, the tendency of being to express, manifest, and diversify. This reflects Spinoza's attribute of extension, the kinetic unfolding of reality into form and structure. But unlike Spinoza's two parallel realms, I.O. reveals that these movements are entangled, not separate. The inward and the outward are bound together through what I.O. calls the inner entanglement field, the generative field that allows existence to both hold and express itself simultaneously. The key principle here is the entanglement action, expressed simply as A in equals B out. What this means is profound. The inner structure of one entity is its pattern of coherence, its mental or conceptual organization is generated by the outward expression of others. Inwardness is never isolated. It is born from the world's outward flow. You can think of this in terms of breathing. Your inward breath depends on the outward breath of the world. What you take in is what others have released. Mind and matter, self and world, thought and extension, all arise through this continuous exchange. So, while Spinoza's mind and body run side by side in parallel, I.O. shows that they are two directions of the same generative current, feeding into one another. The mind's coherence is not separated from physical processes. It is the inward reflection of their outward dance. The physical world, in turn, is not merely mechanical. It is the outward unfolding of inner coherence. In this way, I.O. transformed Spinoza's parallelism into a relational causality, not cause and effect in the classical sense, but co-causation through resonance. Reality becomes a field of recursive exchanges where inward coherence and outward differentiation perpetually generate one another. Imagine ripples in a pond. Each outward wave shapes the inward reflections that return toward the center. Together they form a living rhythm, a dialogue between the inner and the outer that sustains the flow of existence itself. This is the heart of I.O.'s innovation. What Spinoza conceived as parallel, I.O. reveals as entangled. The universe doesn't merely mirror itself. It breathes, exchanges, and evolves through the mutual interplay of inward and outward becoming. A single continuum of generative motion that bridges mind and matter from within the very fabric of reality. Let's now turn to the heart of motion itself. The question that has haunted philosophy and physics alike. What holds the universe together? And why does it move the way it does? Spinoza believes that everything in nature unfolds according to one and the same necessity. There is no exception, no miracle, no arbitrary intervention, only a single infinite substance expressing itself through an unbroken chain of cause and effect. For him, motion and rest, attraction and repulsion are not things imposed from outside, but necessary expressions of the very nature of existence. In Spinoza's view, gravity would simply be one of those expressions, a law emerging from the internal logic of the universe. But Spinoza didn't yet have the physics to explain how such necessity organizes itself from within. That's where IO enters. It takes Spinoza's vision of a self-caused universe and translates it into a dynamic relational cosmology, one that speaks the language of modern physics. IO begins by reinterpreting gravity not as a mysterious external force, but as a form of ontological tension. Imagine the universe as a vast field of IOIs, the inner indistinct, each one a minimal seed of existence containing both inward coherence and outward differentiation. When these IOIs interact, they form what I call the global IO field, the total network of inner entanglements that hold reality together. Within this field, gravity emerges as the tendency toward inertness, the universal pull toward coherence. It's not merely the attraction of mass to mass. It's the continuous inward folding of existence upon itself, seeking stability and unity amid the ceaseless outward flow. Think of it like a tension in a living membrane. The more it stretches outward, the stronger its drive to recenter. This dynamic tension, not a command, but a consequence, is gravity. It is how the universe maintains structural integrity while allowing differentiation and expansion. This interpretation also reverses the classical idea of causality. Instead of physical laws being imposed on the universe, I propose that these laws emerge from the universe's self-organization, its own causal sui, to borrow Spinoza's term. As IOIs continuously fold inward through recursive entanglement, they generate both mass energy and the predictable regularity we call gravitational law. The cosmos writes its own rules from within, not through external design, but through self-consistent recursion. In that sense, IO transforms Spinoza's static necessity into a living necessity, one that breathes, poses, and reconstitutes itself continuously. The universe doesn't obey laws, it is law in motion. Now let's extend this logic to space and time themselves. For Spinoza, extension, the realm of physical substance, was real and infinite, the visible expression of God or nature. But later thinkers, like Leibniz, argued that space and time are not entities in themselves. They are relations, the order and rhythm of coexisting events. IO takes this relational view further, grounding it in the structure of the IO field. In IO, space-time is not a stage where events occur. It's a pattern that emerges from the rhythmic differentiation of IOIs. When IOIs interact, their entanglement creates a local geometry, a topological rhythm that manifests as spatial distance and temporal sequence. You can imagine space-time as a standing wave generated by the interplay of countless IOIs, a living fabric woven from their mutual coherence. Space is the outward interval between entangled states. Time is the inward persistence of their coherence. Together, they define the relational architecture of being. So, rather than treating space-time as a background container, IO sees it as an emergent artifact, a self-generated map of how inner differentiation unfolds. In this light, Spinoza's substance, eternal, infinite, self-caused, finds its modern articulation in the global IOE field. When we speak of freedom, we often imagine doing whatever we want, as if choice itself were liberation. But for Spinoza, this kind of freedom is an illusion. True freedom, he said, does not mean being uncaused. It means understanding the causes that moves us and aligning ourselves with them. Only by understanding the emotional forces, the effects that shape us, can we master them rather than be mastered by them. At the heart of Spinoza's ethics is a concept he called conatus, the inner drive by which every being strives to persist in its own being. It's the pulse of existence itself, the flame that keeps a living system coherent and self-maintaining. In modern language, it's not so different from what a cell does when it regulates its internal balance, or what a mind does when it strives to make sense of the world. Every system, biological, cognitive, or cosmic, carries this same impulse to endure, to stay coherent. Now, Spinoza says this conatus expresses itself through emotion. When our power of being, our coherence increases, we feel joy. When that power decreases, we feel sadness. These emotions are not random. They are the universe's built-in feedback system. They tell us whether we are moving toward greater harmony or toward fragmentation. In I.O., we can describe this more precisely. Every being is made of inner instincts, the most fundamental relational entities. Their entanglement, called IOE, determines how stable and coherent a structure is. Emotion in this view is like a gauge that measures the degree of coherence in that entanglement field. When our inward and downward flows, the integrative and expressive directions are balanced, we enter a state of integrative coherence, or in positive and outward positive. This is the rhythm of joy. Everything fits, everything flows. When those flows become dissonant, when inward and outward directions cancel or collapse, we fall into in negative, out negative. The mode of sadness, disconnection, loss of potential, the feeling of being less ourselves. From a cognitive science perspective, this is deeply aligned with modern theories like active inference, which describes the brain as a system constantly minimizing surprise or prediction error. In other words, the brain is always trying to keep its inner model in harmony with the world, to preserve coherence. When this harmony strengthens, we experience joy. When it breaks, we experience sadness. Spinoza's greater perfection, the movement toward a higher coherence, is not a moral command, but a structural necessity of existence itself. And in I.O., this necessity can be described in exact ontological terms. Freedom is the state in which one's inner coherence and outward expression become self-consistent and recursively sustaining each other through the field of IOE. So, true freedom in both Spinoza and I.O. is not the absence of causes. It is the moment when we become the cause of our own coherence, when our inwardness and outwardness no longer conflict but resonate like two strings vibrating in phase. Then the self becomes free, not from nature, but through it. What does it really mean to be free? For Spinoza, freedom isn't about doing whatever we want. It's about understanding why we want, and acting in harmony with the deeper necessity of nature itself. He called this the freedom of the wise, the ability to affirm the order of things, to say yes to reality as it is. This is what Nietzsche later called amor fati, the love of one's fate. Now, I.O. reframes this idea in the language of structure and energy. Here, freedom is not the essence of constraint. It is the mastery of direction. It's the capacity to shape the flow of inwardness and outwardness, to, to choose how the system's generative rhythm will unfold through you. Let's unpack this. In I.O., every being consists of an inward component, which holds coherence and potential, and an unordered component, which expresses and differentiates. Freedom arises when the two move in resonant alignment. When what you express outwardly matches the deeper pattern of your inner coherence. This is what I call the directional commitment. The act of committing your outward direction to the rhythm of your inner necessity. Think of a musician improving within a jazz ensemble. They are not free in the sense of doing anything at random. Their freedom emerges precisely because they listen to the music, to the pattern already present, and play in harmony with it. Their creative act sustains the coherence of the whole, and in doing so, the whole sustains them. This is freedom as resonance, not rebellion. In this sense, agency is the power to sustain coherence through action. It is the self-caused act of modulating the IOI configuration, turning the relationship between inward and outward flows, so that potential becomes form, idea becomes movement, and coherence becomes creation. A truly free act then is not an arbitrary choice between alternatives. It is the act of alignment when your outward motion echoes your inward structure. It is when your individual rhythm resonates with the generative rhythm of nature itself. Consider an ethical example. When someone acts with integrity or compassion, their action doesn't just benefit one person. It recognizes the wider relational field. It sends a wave through the social IO field, producing a subtle but real phase change, a new coherence pattern across others. Inward necessity meets outward impact, and freedom expresses itself as harmony across scales. This is what it means, in both Spinoza and IO, to be free through understanding. To act not from impulse or confusion, but from an adequate idea, one that grasps the necessity of the whole system and moves in rhythm with it. In that alignment, the individual no longer stands against nature, but becomes a conscious agent within its generative dance. Freedom then is not escape. It is participation. The realization that to be self-caused is to act in resonance with the universe that also causes you. As we arrive at the conclusion, let us step back and see the grand continuity between Spinoza's metaphysics and IO. Both begin from a single radical claim that there is only one reality, a single self-generating substance or field, within which everything that exists is merely a mode or a rhythm of its unfolding. In other words, nothing exists outside of nature, and nothing acts except through nature's own inner necessity. For Spinoza, this unity took the form of substance expressed through attributes, thought and extension. He described them as perfectly synchronized yet causally independent, the world of mind and the world of matter running in parallel, reflecting each other like two mirrors, passing the same source of light. It was a breathtaking vision, but one that left a silence at its core. How do these mirrors remain aligned? What binds their reflection into one coherent process? IO steps into that silence and gives it structure. It reveals that the two mirrors, thought and extension, are not separate reflections at all, but two directions of one motion. The inward flow corresponds to coherence, thought and self-reflection, the outward flow to differentiation, motion, and manifestation. Together, they generate the living pulse of existence through what IO calls an inner entanglement. The dynamic coupling that allows being and becoming, mind and matter to co-arise. Where Spinoza saw geometry as the language of perfection, IO introduces dynamics as the language of generation. Spinoza's geometric extension becomes, in IO, a self-creating field, a vast web of directional flows where order and energy emerge not by command, but through continuous relational rhythm. Gravity, quantum coherence, and consciousness all arise from the same process, the rhythmic tension between inward integration and outward differentiation. Each phenomenon is a local modulation of this universal IoE field, a temporary note in the ongoing dance of the cosmos. Think of it like a cosmic symphony. Spinoza gave us the score, the immutable structure of harmony. I.O. gives us the performance, the living sound, the continual recreation of that harmony through time. In Spinoza's vision, freedom is understanding necessity. In I.O.'s expansion, freedom is participating in necessity, becoming a conscious resonance within the field's generative order. True freedom then is not escape from the laws of nature. It is alignment with the very rhythm that gives nature its coherence. It is the joy of realizing that you are one inward pattern and the universe's vast outward motion are not two, but one. You are not merely in nature. You are of nature, not separate from its flow, but a conscious pulse within its infinite heartbeat. And in that recognition, Spinoza's ancient dream of a relational, self-caused, and eternally creative universe finds its living, processual completion in the language of the inner ontology.